Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. I hope your day is off to a great start. If not, let's make sure this call turns your frown upside down. Hey, this is your host, Craig Kreskis, and for our first-time attendees joining the community call, I want to welcome you to our monthly call. And for those of you who are loyalists who continue to attend, thank you so much. We really appreciate the support. And as always, your comments and your feedback can make a difference in our content and the topics that we present. To me, I always remember one of the first quotes that Satya had made internally for us when he was promoted to CEO, and he said that time is the most treasured gift in the world. And so I know that 60 minutes of your day is a gift that you're spending with us. So let us know how to make it worth your time. You know, you could always provide us feedback out on the Yammer site. Feel free to tag me at Craig Kreskis and let us know how we're doing. We want to make sure, again, there's value to the time that you spend with us. Well, it's March, and certainly it's madness, and I'm extremely excited about today's topic and speakers. But first, I want to actually just kind of point out and note just the community leaders on this call. You know, we all volunteer, and you know, I've taken the lead somewhat in this community, and I feel very fortunate to have such incredible contributions from the names on the left-hand side. These are the folks who help drive everything that we present to you as a community. And so when we met a few weeks ago to brainstorm on topics, I can't recall if it was Barb or Jim or both of them, they said, let's get some Dynamics partners in the room and let's talk about some emerging technologies and some experts at Microsoft. So I'm extremely excited again. I'll have some introductions in a moment to Tiana and Bob, but first just a quick update in the community itself. You know, again, our community continues to grow, so thanks for promoting this to your peers. And in terms of updates, I just want to make sure, again, you know, the one-stop shop for Yammer, it still becomes, for me as well, that first stop for any Q&A. And again, there are a team of experts, all of us here at Microsoft, who monitor and ensure that we help you sort of tackle the technical and the pre-sales questions that you're coming up against out in the field. So please keep posting them to Yammer. And if you haven't leveraged Yammer before, again, there's the URL to it. And not to insult those of you, but I also want to make sure you know there's these small features such as search. Over in the top left corner, as you subscribe to the Community for Business Applications, you could do a search, for example, if you type in blockchain, right? And you could also filter it based on the community itself. Here are the results. And then on the far right, you can also do a search just in business applications. And you notice there's some documentation out there already. So again, I know so often you want to email the PTSs and your technical resources, but just to make sure, a lot of times the questions you have already been answered. Also, so many of us at Microsoft have been kind of aligned to how you guys go to market. So for example, a lot of us who have been so focused on Dynamics or business apps have found ourselves kind of bleeding into other areas of the Microsoft platform and technologies. And so I just want to make sure everybody knows about the other communities that you'll rely on as your business continues to evolve, whether it's through data and AI, apps and infrastructure. And just like we have our regularly scheduled community calls, so do they. So again, I just want to make sure if you're new to the call, you didn't know that, and you have questions about modern workplace, things such as Office 365, et cetera, enterprise EMS, enterprise mobility, and security, those are great communities to support the questions and the business development opportunities in front of you. And again, of course, here's our published schedule. Again, I'm excited to kick this off in just a moment around blockchain and how do we integrate an opportunities within Dynamics business. But also want to let you know we're trying to be transparent and helpful for you to plan your time to know that here's the calendar that we have planned through the rest of our fiscal year. Again, let us know if this is hitting the mark for you or if there's opportunities that you'd want us to cover and topics, let us know. And then as I have done in the last few months on our community calls, just want to recap and kind of tie back to what we did in the previous month in which we talked about publishing apps out on AppSource. The poll question that we had asked you was, have you begun the process of publishing your app or your IP on AppSource? At the time, prior to the call, there was just a few of you. In fact, only 8% had begun the process. So hopefully that call, if you haven't seen it, you can go back to our YouTube channel. We have all of our events archived and available for you at any time. And with that, I was going to ask a poll question here. So if, Barb, you can help kind of kick it off. We have a quick poll question for you to kind of tee up the rest of the session.
All right, I have the poll listed. So on the left-hand side, you should see the poll question. So today, how confident are you to lead a conversation with a customer who asks you about blockchain and how it can help their business? So if you guys would be so kind as to submit to the poll, we would appreciate your feedback. And if you're not seeing the poll, down at the bottom of your screen, there should be like a little pencil that says polls. If you click on that, that will take you to the poll. All right, it looks like we got most everyone in. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, everybody. All right, so if you're like me and you're sitting in an office or home somewhere and you're like, just get this chucklehead off the stage. I came here to learn and see the main event. So here we go. All right, as we kick this off, I just wanted to reflect back a couple of weeks ago. If any of you watched some of the Oscar awards, I caught some of it. And when I was thinking about teeing this up, the time with Tiana and Bob and their preparation, I was thinking about how directors and producers are so fortunate to get to see such great actors and actresses, and many times they just sit back and they just watch the show and they see these folks interact. And this is sort of the moments that we've had in preparation for this call, just listening to Tiana and Bob talk about blockchain and about this emerging technology and what it can bring to our business. So I'm going to pass it off to Meryl Streep and Dustin Hoffman and let them do our thing. So Tiana and Bob, take it away.
Thank you so much, Craig and Barbara, for having us both here. And Bob, nice to be back with you.
Same. Nice to be back with you as well. The Dustin Hoffman has Rain Man quotes going through my head now. So.
There you go. There you go. Okay, so my name is Tiana Human. I have been at Microsoft for about 1.5 years. I'm our lead blockchain architect for our cross-domain delivery organization. And my background actually is in healthcare. As a clinician, technologist, and researcher, but always been very, very interested in leading-edge technologies and how we can use those technologies to bring delightful experiences on both sides of our business, both to the customers and to the individuals delivering those services to the customers, because truly believe that you can't have one without the other. And I'm really excited here to talk to you about blockchain and Bob and my experience working with customers in the blockchain enterprise space.
And my name is Bob Jacobs. I'm a cloud solution architect with our One Commercial Partner team. So my background is largely in software engineering and software architecture, but I work with customers to get their products to market, help them build cloud-based solutions. And one of my key areas of focus over the past several months has been blockchain, and it's becoming a very hot topic for a majority of my partners these days. So I'm just here to, educate you as much as I can on what blockchain can do for you.
Thanks, Bob. So let's talk a little bit about technology in general and how it's always affected how we do business, even when we look back into mechanization through mass production, automation, and our Industry 4.0 connectivity. And, we spend a lot of time talking about how quickly technology is changing, but there's still some fundamental things that don't really change about how we do our business.
And I can basically talk on, the basics haven't changed much over time. So, business has It's always been based on trust between parties. We have customers and suppliers and retailers and things, and every business transaction needs at least two partners. We have relationships and connections that are quite complex, and you have to trust all organizations to meet obligations and things. So it hasn't changed all of that much as far as the business relationships are concerned.
Absolutely. And Bob, I'm sure you've seen this with your customers, definitely seen this with our customers. Really building trust is a very complex process. And that's why trust is so valuable. But it can also be very time consuming and expensive to build that up. And so when we look at blockchain or distributed ledger technologies, it really is an interesting tool, not really a new technology, a technology that's been around for a while, but the enterprise business are starting to understand how blockchain can take that time-consuming and expensive to build trust between their customers and suppliers, and really use that to leverage building that trust. And as we all know, when trust breaks down, it can have really serious consequences. And so on this, let me click here. So on the right-hand side of the slide here, this is a specific example about what can happen when trust breaks down. So in 2009, there was a salmonella outbreak in peanut butter. And that peanut butter came from one company, which went out of business. But interestingly, the overall demand for peanut butter in the United States went down by 25%. And so when we're talking about trust and how you build those complex relationships around trust, it isn't just about you and your customers. It's about your competitors and the entire industry too. And so when we think about different strategies such as leveraging distributed ledger technologies or blockchain as we call it, this is really something that affects not just you and your customers, but the industry as a whole.
And when we're talking about trust, when we start to get into the specifics of implementations of how do you actually do that. So traditionally we built trust in transactions in a couple different ways. So a big part of that would be some sort of intermediary. So the intermediary plays a really big role. They normally control huge amounts of data, and their job is to basically verify claims. So they're in the middle, and they're doing the verification, and that's how both transacting parties would establish that trust. They would typically hold on to assets and release them after certain processes are in place. And those verification processes typically are very manual, and that is meant to ensure that our records are complete and accurate. They're important processes, and they definitely serve important purposes. There's downsides, though. One is that they can be slow, they can be expensive, and there's typically a good bit of friction that can be introduced by putting that intermediary in the middle. So when we then ask the question of what would it really take to reduce that friction and to make these transactions as seamless as we can and as efficient as we can, okay, what do you need? We're trying to get rid of that intermediary. So one thing that we would need is a complete historical record of transactions that are occurring. So you would need to be confident that that historical record is accurate. It hasn't been tampered with in any way. And you would also need to ensure that all of the organizations that you work with have a copy of that record so that they can trust the current state and making sure that everything is up to date. So then that would take us to blockchain. That brings us to blockchain. So basically, what is it? Blockchain is really a tool that can give us a lot of that function which we just talked about. It's essentially a record of those transactions. It's not that unlike what you'd probably be using today. I would say something like Excel or a database. The difference, though, is that instead of just having one copy, instead of just having a single Excel file or a centralized database, everybody in the network, basically everyone that's participating in the transactions, has an identical copy of this ledger, and can make transactions against that. So it doesn't necessarily mean that every member goes in and says yes to every transaction. There's a way that data can be shown if there's a mismatch. If somebody was to go in and make a transaction locally that does not stay in sync with what everyone else is seeing across this shared connection, that's going to be very visible. Everything is going to be very transparent there. And because you have visibility into those mismatches, you can basically authenticate that it's valid, and we get that sense of trust that we've been looking for without having that centralized governing body basically do the verification on our behalf in a manual way. So that is essentially is blockchain in a nutshell.
And Bob, I hear so much about when I talk to customers, and tell me if you're hearing the same thing, but when I talk to customers, the first thing that they have questions about is cryptocurrency and proof of work and Bitcoin. And, what we're hearing in the mass media and even in the enterprise e-news is a lot about ICOs and cryptocurrency, and that's where a lot of the buzz is. And so, what I try and talk to my customers about is that when we're talking about the enterprise space of blockchain, we're not talking about cryptocurrencies and this proof of work where we have all the different individuals that are participating on a network, building consensus about the validity of a transaction, and that is an anonymous environment where anybody can join the network, anybody can read or write to it. And then what we have in the enterprise space is private consortium. So this is a network of individuals that may be competitors. So it's not a completely trusted environment, but they come together because there's a common good and a common value and common efficiency that they see in participating in this network for blockchain. And so we don't deal with cryptocurrency in those organizations because actually all of the members are known. And so the way that we build consensus about whether a transaction is valid or not is done in a different way than our proof of work. And I'm just wondering, are you hearing the same thing? And how are your customers responding to you letting them know, that's really not where enterprise business lives, is cryptocurrency and proof of work, but more in a private network?
100%. That's where they typically start. Is they're basically brought into the process of blockchain from looking into the cryptocurrencies. But more and more, I'm getting more customer calls and interest in sort of the enterprise space. So in answer to your question, yes, but I'm starting to see that transition a little bit more. As looking at blockchain as sort of an established technology that could be used in a consortium. I'm seeing a lot of that.
So I guess maybe we and the other enterprise leaders might be doing a better job at educating our business partners.
It takes time. It definitely takes time.
Yeah. So when you form a team, why do you try to form a team? Because teamwork builds trust, and trust builds speed. So when we think about all the different engagements that we've gone through at Microsoft, one of the things that Microsoft has really been focused on is optimizing this technology for enterprise applications. And although the technology of blockchain is just fascinating, it opens up so many different avenues. And it really, in many ways, can be an equalizer, socioeconomic equalizer, and change business models, traditional business models as we think of them today. But the technology doesn't occur in a vacuum, and you use technology to deliver results. And so what we want to look at is what are the results that blockchain can actually deliver to your organization from an enterprise point of view. And so we really believe that blockchain is poised to deliver and drive digital transformation beyond company walls. And so these are the 4 pillars you may have seen before from Microsoft. And we've already talked about how you can make your process more seamless and efficient, and that's a huge benefit of blockchain. But it's actually bigger than that. What we want to do is it comes back to what you can do with visibility and security, and again, trust. Trust is the core of the entire initiative around blockchain. If you have customers, partners, other organizations that you're dealing with, and you need to build trust, and you'd like to do that in a transparent environment that drives speed and efficiency, blockchain is an option, a good option to move forward with. And so on these pillars, we talk about we want to engage our customers with fast, frictionless experience that's going to connect directly to them and build their trust in your organization. You also want to empower your employees, right? We talked about earlier about that delightful experience and allow them to work more efficiently with less risk and reduced compliance cost using this secure and transparent records that blockchain networks provide. And then optimizing your operations. This is really one of the big motivators in enterprise blockchain. It really simplifies common transactions and enables this time plus 0 settlement times. So when we're looking in supply chain and contract negotiation, these kinds of negotiations take place over phone calls, fax machines, all kinds of different very inefficient non-secure ways, and there's a lot of friction that results in trying to keep track of the steps of negotiation and final contracts. And blockchain really is an awesome way of reducing that friction. And then transforming your business by eliminating or creating new business models for intermediaries. We hear, Bob, I'm sure you've heard this too, where you're presenting something about blockchain, and it could be a clearinghouse that's interested in having a blockchain briefing, and they quickly say, oh my goodness, is blockchain going to replace me? Is my industry going to go away? And really what is happening is it's helping businesses think about new business models and new ways to engage with the digital transformation economy. And so although many people are crying, it's the end of days for, third parties, and you're going to be eliminated by blockchain. I really don't see that happening. I see people repositioning themselves and creating new business models, which open new markets and enable entirely new business models.
Yeah, I mean, I heard a bunch of the same stuff, with the internet. When the internet hit, it was similar claims, but I think it's just an opportunity to look at things a little bit differently and take advantage of some of the opportunities that it provides.
Absolutely. So this is a favorite slide of mine, at least, because I would say a large portion of the customers that I'm talking to across all the different verticals of industry: healthcare, manufacturing, insurance, HR and recruiting, finance, hedge funds, everyone, in some way, some part of their business is a supply chain. And when we think about supply chains, we think about, we may have a customer or a supplier, and we have to go through these motions with them every time we bring on a new customer or a new relationship is developed. We have to talk about how payments are managed. We have to talk about how contracts are managed, how the product is managed, and security and identity. And we go through this process over and over again. And because each customer is unique, we have to reinvent this. And it costs a lot of human resources, a lot of time, and monetary funds in order to do this. And so, but what we have found, leveraging blockchain technologies and a concept we're going to talk about in a minute, around smart contracts, which would be the properties and logic that drive the transactions and your relationship between your customers and partners. What we find is that we can take a lot of these processes, the core templates for building this business relationship, and we can digitize it, and then we can have that same template and adjust it for each customer. And by being able to do this in a very efficient, secure way, also a transparent way across all the individuals participating in this business interaction, what we see is a significant reduction in personnel, time, and cost. And this is the return on investment for organizations. And I think this really speaks to our Dynamics partners and the ERP connection to their business and their customers. It's a tremendous efficiency and transformation that can occur, and an added value to what our Dynamics partners are already offering to their customers. So there is a ERP software company that recently did a proof of concept, and what they wanted to do is demonstrate how blockchain can be integrated with an organization's ERP system. And this was done in the aviation and energy industries. And so this is the ERP provider was working with commercial airlines, and what they found is that even when they use these integrated systems of communications and other systems with their customers, communications still were not standardized, and there was a lot of verbal and paper-based inefficient use of individuals and time. And so what they did is they took this project and they demonstrated how blockchain can be used for asset management, including tracking supply chains, parts, shipments, and even to log and verify commercial airline maintenance work that is done. And this included everyone from the airline pilots all the way through to the maintenance workers to parts vendors. And they really were able to expand their ERP systems to even greater efficiency and transformation for their customers. And so that's I thought, a pretty interesting use of blockchain and really understanding how we can integrate it with our Dynamics partners and with the services they're providing currently. Have you worked with any customers in this space or had any other?
Well, I mean, oh, sorry, I think I got disconnected there for a second. Yeah, definitely have. I mean, even as we advance to the next, I mean, Bank Hapoalim is actually a really good example of how they've used blockchain. So what they've actually done is they've been able to use blockchain to streamline, I would say, their bank guarantee process. So basically, what that does, what it really does is helps customers make large purchases, basically like real estate. And that process typically takes quite a bit of time, a lot of documentation. I'm sure that anybody that's gone through this process knows what I'm talking about. A lot of multiple in-person visits to bank branches. And what they were really looking to do, and what they've implemented, is a blockchain-enabled platform, and that lets them securely collaborate directly with their customers on the actual documents, and it doesn't require them to come in any type of in-person verification, which is just a better experience for the customer. And for them, it's a competitive advantage. And then, another example that I would probably point to would be Webjet. So Webjet is, they're basically big in Australia and New Zealand. They're actually their leading online travel agency. So they handle a lot. They handle thousands of bookings a day, and when they do that, each one has to go through multiple operators every single time, and the high volume and the number of parties that they integrate with can lead to a lot of human error that can have direct impact on their customers. It can have direct impact on their partners, and that can actually have pretty serious financial consequences for the company itself. So what they're doing is they're using a blockchain solution to basically create a complete and secure record, and that's held independently across their systems, across the board. So due to the hashing nature of blockchain itself, that eliminates data mismatches because you're getting that sort of authoritative ledger across all those parties, and greatly reducing the human error aspect of it. And it builds that trust and accountability, and that has quite a number of benefits for them. And they're also using it to streamline the payment process as well. So they're taking advantage of. They're very forward thinking in this space. So those are two that I would point to.
Yeah, increasing efficiency and this whole idea around reconciliation. And I know in the hedge fund industry, 80% of the time of the traders and all the people involved in running a hedge fund company, 80% of their time is spent in reconciliation of the day before money transfers and deals that occurred. I worked with them, and they came in and said that between 9 and 12 every morning, that entire amount of time is spent by the entire team reconciling the transactions from the day before. And even after that reconciliation, there's still, which is a little scary, huge discrepancies that occur. And so having the ability to log something on a ledger, have it be immutable, having it, all the members of the network validate that it is accurate, and for that to be something that can be referenced forever and ever, is really, really huge, and drives tremendous amount of efficiency and transparency. And think about all the time that's freed up to work on other interesting endeavors. So another use case that we wanted to share is around Microsoft, actually. You may be familiar with our company. I think you are, since you're a partner, but you may not know that one of the reasons we're so interested in blockchain and technology is that we've seen what it can do in our own business transactions. And so in 2015, there was a huge change to our business model, and we shifted from selling software licenses to digital subscriptions. And when that happened, our number of partners selling in bulk went from about 15 to thousands. And so all of these partners need credit from Microsoft Treasury, and so we were really, really challenged of how we would tackle this problem this challenge and how to meet this huge demand. And so we tackled some of the low-hanging fruit, things like digitizing web signatures, but that didn't really solve the underlying problem. And we needed to share data so that all the banks and the customers and us at Microsoft would have a single source of truth to work from that wouldn't require reconciliation, which is what we were just talking about. And so that's what led us to blockchain. And long story short, we outlined this process, and it had many complicated steps back and forth, lots of redundancies, and it took at least several weeks for us to establish credit to our partners, and we were able to simplify this process down to just 5 steps. And the new process now takes anywhere from a few hours to a few days. So we've personally benefited from dog fooding our own blockchain. Another example is Maersk. So they are the largest shipping container operator in the world. And the challenge they were facing is that the marine insurance market is very complicated. There's lots of regulators, many different regulatory and compliance jurisdictions to consider and deal with. And then on top of that, there's risk from weather, port delays, pirates, damaged cargo. It goes on and on. So this is a really complicated business to be in, and it makes it really difficult to accurately assess risk to provide insurance. And so duplication of data, lack of data, fraud are also some really serious issues for Maersk and the shipping container industry as a whole. And cost really has become unmanageable for many of them. And so Maersk, working with partners, developed a blockchain solution that streamlines claims and also settlement processes. So when we talked about earlier about being able to digitize a contract between, say, insurance and the Maersk entity, you're able to put that actually on the ledger and build that transparency. And so they had real-time visibility into the location and condition of the high-value assets that are moving all over the world, those high-value assets being the containers and what was inside of them. And so the result is insurers see risk in real time. Premiums can be agreed upon and settled in seconds. So I send a contract to you. It's digitized. What I sent to you is recorded as a transaction on the ledger. You digitally sign it and accept it, or you send it back to me with some negotiated new terms. I view that, and then we eventually agree on a settlement. And all of those transactions are recorded as a transaction on the ledger and cannot be tampered with. And so this is really reduced risk, enable them to have real-time insight in these especially volatile markets, and just has completely transformed how they do business. So when we look at common use cases and shared characteristics across industries, what the 3 core assets or characteristics that we see around leveraging distributed technologies for businesses, and those businesses can be in manufacturing, retail, insurance, banking and capital markets, government, health. We're working with many customers in all of these different verticals. We see that there's 3 core things here. One is that they involve the transfer an asset. So they have the need to transfer an asset in some form, be it a physical asset across supply chain, or a monetary asset like a contract or a derivative, or a digital representation of a physical asset. Next, what we see is that they all include some sort of cross-organizational workflow. Very rarely is a blockchain network within a single company. What is core to this is bringing in competitors or other industries to improve workflows and efficiency and transformation across all those different industries by participating in this network. And then third, there's this element of audit or reconciliation that is usually causing a lot of pain and cost, and is relieved by blockchain. So blockchain is a journey. You want to speak to this? Tell us about what your blockchain journey has been, Bob, and what you've seen your customers.
Yeah, certainly. So basically, customers today. I mean, first of all, it's a really exciting technology, I would say. And it has a lot of potential, but it's still relatively new. So. When you're thinking about blockchain, you mentioned a journey, but it's a little bit different than it might be from, I would say, an older technology. So anytime I start speaking with customers, when you're trying to figure out, okay, when is blockchain appropriate for me, I normally go at it from the perspective of 4 questions. So I normally ask them 4 questions, and question number 1, pretty simple. I mean, does it need to be secure? In most cases, the answer to everything is yes. But when you really start to dig into, what that really means as far as if it needs to be secure, it becomes a next level problem when we address it with question number 2: does it need to be shared? And you had mentioned that most companies today are sort of doing business-to-business types of transactions. So those are the types of scenarios that we would really be looking for. That kind of guides us into whether a consortium would be appropriate here. And then so question number 1 was, does it need to be secure? Number 2 was, does it need to be shared? Number 3 I would normally ask is, does it need to be distributed? And then number 4 would be, does it need to be authoritative? So that's really what we're looking for: a secure, shared, distributed, and authoritative ledger. So those are pretty generic questions, but they're really meant to sort of zone in on whether or not this is something that it falls into the realm of blockchain, and does it really is this something that blockchain would really need to be solved? I don't know if those are some of the same types of scenarios that you've been encountering, but those are normally the first 4 questions that I ask to start to get things going.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Because, a lot of times when I meet with a customer, one of the first questions, if I'm doing maybe an architectural design session or scenario envisioning with them, is I say, why can't you do this with another technology?
Yeah, I do that too. All the time.
So because what you also find, so we talked about the ICO cryptocurrency excitement, is that you also see, because of all the press that blockchain gets, is companies saying, I need a blue blockchain, and I need it on my landing page of my website immediately. And so many companies are really enamored by this technology. They want to be part of this excitement, and so what happens is they come to us with a technology looking for a solution.
Yeah, they're chasing buzzwords, basically, is what I normally call it. I say that quite a bit.
Yep. So really looking at can we use a distributed database, or asking some questions around, do multiple people need to write to this transaction? So when we think about the workflow process, does company A or organization need to initiate the process, and then another organization needs to do some kind of validation or the next step in the process? And so is it some kind of a process where there's multiple readers and multiple writers that are involved and have a vested interest in completing whatever this transaction is? So that's another thing that I talk to people about. And then then, building this trust and having an immutable record is to ensure that there's no fraud taking place. Interestingly, Mars with Uncle Ben's Rice, they've created a way for their customers to have visibility into where that rice came from. So from farm to table, you can see where your rice came from geographically, validation that the individuals that were harvesting the rice were not illegal labor, and then how it was transported. And so they're getting tremendous amount of positive feedback from their customers just because people really, really, really like to understand where their food is coming from, or where your diamonds come from and things like that. And so what the blockchain ledger really does is it allows people to have that transparent trust and visibility into these processes. So really exciting stuff. So Azure on blockchain, we've been talking a lot about blockchain, Bob, there's a whole long list of things around Azure blockchain.
Yeah.
And I know that you're the man making it all happen on the cloud as the cloud specialist here.
Yeah, yes. There's so when we talk about blockchain, and we talk about blockchain solutions. So we're going to be getting into the various pieces of how this works. But at a high level, Azure is a really good spot to build out blockchain solutions because it has so many pieces in place that are going to be necessary for a solid blockchain solution. And blockchain can be a little bit different in that. And we'll talk about this at length, but not all of your data is necessarily going to be stored in blockchain. It's more about attestation. So there's always some sort of off-chain type of presence as well. And because of that, certain pieces like identity and key management and off-chain analytics and those types of things, Azure is really good for getting you those types of things, immediately on day one. And it doesn't feel that unlike some of the other cloud solutions that you would be building. We'll mention in a little bit about some of the hosted ledgers that we have, but the point being here is that most of the building blocks that you're going to need to build some of these solutions are going to be familiar to you if you're familiar with Azure.
Fantastic. And so Azure blockchain is ready for enterprise. And how we have gotten here has been quite the journey. So Microsoft has been involved in blockchain for quite a few years now. And so we started out looking at public blockchain and we've to date talked to hundreds of customers, done tons of proof of concepts and MVPs, and really dug in with our research and engineering teams to work with our customers and our partners to understand where are the gaps between cryptocurrency and proof of work in the public space and enterprise blockchain in the private space. And what are those gaps, and what do we need to fill those gaps so that we can move to production in enterprise business. And so we have built out three primary technologies that really fill these gaps. And so it really allows for your experience to be flexible. So we understand that you need to have blockchain on your own terms. Our platform allows you to bring any blockchain protocol or any distributed ledger to our Azure platform and deploy it, and then wire it together with our middleware for security, key management, and other machine learning and other services, and then integrate it into your infrastructure and third-party systems. This is unique because our competitors are also doing wonderful things with blockchain, but they are focused on a single ledger. So IBM and Oracle look at Hyperledger. And if you want to build out your blockchain solution, you would be leveraging Hyperledger to do that. And what differentiates Microsoft from our competitors is that you can bring any ledger to our platform. In fact, you can bring more than one ledger to our platform and do cross-ledger consortiums. And so the technologies that we have built have enabled us to do that.
And one of the big things that you touched on is that where we're different is largely if you look in our marketplace, you constantly hear this thing as blockchain as a service. So really, what are we doing? Since we're not focusing on building our own ledger, so we're not necessarily owning that ledger. We're not forking, from Ethereum, and we're not, building a product per se for that ledger. We're supporting all of those ledgers. So you'll hear the concept of blockchain as a service, and that's directly a marketplace item in the Azure portal. So if you were to go to the marketplace, you find this really diverse open source ecosystem. I think we have something like, 70 or so like blockchain protocols, including the 10 big ones that are most commonly used. And there's offerings from startups and mature companies, and they're building these solutions and offering them up through our marketplace. So as a developer or an enterprise client, you basically get a single-click deployment of a blockchain developer environment. You can get that running in a matter of minutes. So you're not going and installing Geth and doing all those types of things yourself. Those are basically done for you on your behalf.
And it's huge. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but so when we talk to customers, one of the things that they were telling us is that I have to go to GitHub and I got to deploy all this code and I got to spin up a VM and I have to deploy 70 different services to get this up and running. And we said, okay, we can help. And so what we enable you to do, instead of spending a couple weeks just trying to get a test network up, you can do it in about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And I did see a question here around what is the Microsoft Azure blockchain. Microsoft does not have a blockchain. We have a very agile, tiered approach to our platform that allows you to bring any blockchain, deploy it on the Azure platform, and to build your solution. And again, this is really the differentiator. So if you want to bring Hyperledger to Microsoft Azure platform, you can do that. If you want to use Ethereum, you can do that. If you want to deploy Quorum, you can do that. So we do not have a blockchain. The specific blockchain. It is bring any blockchain, and again, this is a huge differentiator. So you want to tell us about App Builder?
Yeah. So okay, step one, we can establish a blockchain quickly through the marketplace. One click, and you get your blockchain laid down. There's also a need, so that would allow you to quickly get a development environment up. But what if you really wanted to get a more built out solution? So it's normally not as simple as just getting a blockchain ledger out. You normally need quite a number of additional pieces if you're going to build a full distributed application, sort of like an end-to-end scenario. So we have an application which is called App Builder, and I would target its use case as a way to build proof of concept frameworks, and it's targeting developers. So you get a number of assets out of the box, which saves you a lot of time. Basically, you get an ARM template, and that ARM template has all of the scaffolding that you really need to build out a blockchain proof of concept. So it includes a blockchain network. There's a gateway API in front of that. You get a responsive web app. So you get a nice front end where you can deploy smart contracts. You get Azure Active Directory integration right out of the box. That's a number of questions and can be a challenge. You can spend days just wiring this stuff together and talking about it. You get Key Vault. Azure Key Vault gets integrated immediately. You also get a SQL database that's configured, and it collects off-chain data. which brings into the ability to do a lot of analytics work that we get questions about. There's basically an Azure Event Hub as well that will collect that ingested data, which finds its way both onto the chain as well as into the off-chain store, and some hashing services and signing services and things like that. So main point being is much like you would get a one-click deployment of a blockchain instance from the marketplace. This is really a one-click proof of concept environment. And why I personally find this very valuable is when talking about blockchain to sort of even ideate with customers to come up with appropriate scenarios. It's one thing to go up to the whiteboard and spend a lot of time hashing that out, but being able to spin this environment up very quickly, it gives them the ability to sort of get their hands dirty with talking about smart contracts so they can really see what it would be like to digitize these processes. So really, really slick way to get started, I'd say.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's a prototype, right? It's a real network up and running with real smart contracts that you can interact with through a UI. And so, again, instead of spending months and months trying to build something to see if it's the right thing, within a week you can have a prototype up and running and say, okay, this works, this doesn't work, and then be able to iterate on that. Again, thinking towards, what am I going to do in my production environment? I am going to go through these kind of quickly because I do want to make sure we have maybe a couple minutes for time to answer some of your questions. Another one of our advanced enterprise technologies that we have built to help customers accelerate their enterprise production of blockchain is what we call enterprise smart contracts. And basically what this is it's a very secure off-chain enclave that allows off-chain data to communicate with the ledger. And although the ledger is very secure in itself, anytime you leave the ledger and bring data back to the ledger, you're opening up a risk surface. And so our engineering team has come up with a very, very secure binding fabric environment, an off-chain enclave environment that allows you to access off-chain data and bring it back to the blockchain, and it enables you to do things like protect your IP. You may not want everybody on the network to see your IP, and so that IP can live off-chain but still interact with and complete transactions on the ledger. The other technology that we have developed is something called our COCO framework. There's references to all of this at the end of this talk. I encourage you to pull up these white papers. They're written well and fairly easy to follow. And the COCO framework is an added layer. Once you've built your production system, if you want to be able to scale that, provide another layer of confidentiality and consortium governance, the COCO framework allows you to do this, and it allows you to do this with any ledger, and it's a tremendous asset. And then here's some of the resources that you can go to learn more. I really encourage you to do that. And then finally, I wanted to talk about would you engage your customers with Dynamics? The services has three primary offerings that can help you do engagements with your customers to help them get their blockchain up and running, and where you can then work with them to integrate it with your Dynamics offering. And so the Blockchain Essentials prototyping is building out App Builder. There's also another engagement model where we spend building out your business model, a ledger, and all the smart contracts associated with that for moving to a pilot production. And then we have an early access program that gives you access to our advanced private preview technologies such as COCO and Enterprise Smart Contract environment, where we work with you to build out those technologies in your blockchain ledger. And I think that's what we have. Here's the links, and let's see if we have any time for questions. Thank you all very, very much.
So there's one question in the queue. It said that you guys had explained about how blockchain builds trust, but in a supply chain where I've established supply chain with known suppliers who are on open account terms, what trust is blockchain providing in that scenario?
So what blockchain is providing as far as trust is transparency around transactions and greater depth and visibility into what is happening in every single step of the supply chain transaction. So a lot of times in supply chain, we see where something originates and where it ends up, and we may have some details around different transactions that occur between suppliers and distributors or carriers, but that is in a centralized place. And there are, just like we talked about with the airline industry, although you may have transparency and visibility into some of your supply chain, what blockchain can do through an ERP system is really increase visibility and transparency and expand the network of individuals that can interact with your business.
Awesome. Thank you. Listen, I want to say a huge thank you to the both of you for taking time from your primary roles to educate our Dynamics or Business Apps partner community. As I said, every time I'm on a call with both Tiana and Bob, I just feel smarter even being on the call. So I want to say thank you for sharing your knowledge, your wisdom, and the things that you're working on, and sort of what the point of view is from Microsoft. But as you think about the thrust of these community calls, is to provide you with what is possible. And so with that, we threw out a poll slide here. We're kind of making one up on the fly here. Wanted to understand did this hit the mark, and is there some more information that you'd like in order to get started? I mean, Tiana and Bob have put together some great examples of other businesses and other industries, things for you to think about and how to get started. As always, we can't host a partner call and without a partner saying, are we going to post the slides? We will share the recordings and every piece of information that we can to get you started. And so keep an eye out on the Yammer site. We'll put that in the archives. We'll post it as an announcement. And then, of course, it takes about 48 hours for us to get the archive YouTube event onto our channel. So that'll be there before the end of the week. I want to close out the call again. Thank you so much for joining us in March. Let your friends, your peers, your leaders let them know about what we're doing here, and have them join us in April. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye-bye. Bye.